Welcome to the Mind Vine podcast, where we challenge the stigma associated with mental illness through conversations about a variety of issues impacting mental health. Here we bring you news, views, and interviews that intrigue, educate, and celebrate recovery.
Welcome to the Mind Vine podcast. My name is Darryl Mathers, and today is a great day to talk mental health with one of my favorite people. Not only is he a mental health advocate and lived experience, he is a fan of hip hop, much like I am. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. I'm sure there's a few others he knows that I don't know. But not that we're going to talk music, but it's just part of his personality. We've got to know him well doing some work at the hospital, and we're going to share his story today. And I'd like to welcome to the podcast, Jordon Beenen.
Hello.
What's going on?
Just having a pretty chill morning.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's better than the opposite, right? So we're going to chat about kind of your journey, which I know is extensive, and maybe we can just start by your mental health journey. Like, at what point did you first become acquainted with mental health and the fact that it might be part of your life?
Well, I always had a sort of intense sadness that I would now label depression as a youth. I had a very tumultuous childhood, not because of my parents. My parents were wonderful and they treated me wonderfully, and I got along exceptionally well with my sister. But I was relentlessly teased and physically assaulted as a youth. And so I felt a deep sadness, depression. There's no point in this. What is the point in going on? What is the point in doing this? This hurts so bad. No one likes me. No one cares for me. There's no purpose in me being here. But I never, because I was so young, I never thought, I have a mental health, not problem, but, issue. So I sort of kept on going through life, and high school was no easier. Lots of teasing, lots of isolation, lots of just generally feeling like I didn't belong, like no one cared. And so like a constant state of depression. Every day felt like a slog. Every felt like there was no joy. There was nothing to look forward to. And yes, throughout my childhood, I did do things. I was in Boy Scouts. I played hockey. I liked to golf. I liked to fish. I did all these things. But even if in the moment I could experience some happiness, that depression, that sadness, that feeling like it wasn't all right was always lurking behind me, just waiting to grab again and pull me back into it. So, high school, I switch schools. I move and I switch schools in grade 10, and I endure some of the worst treatment and abuse that I have ever endured. And I decide I'm gonna end it. It's all gonna end right here. And I feel like I probably didn't have the full intention of doing it because I mentioned it to another student who I thought I could trust. And he told the principal, and the principal told my parents, and that put an end to that. But even that did not trigger there's a mental health issue here. It just sort of got pushed by the wayside. Are you okay? We love you. You can come to us with anything. That sort of stuff. which is great, and it was wonderful, and my parents were wonderful, but I still felt it. And for years after that, I would cling to things like music and books and stuff as like some sort of life raft to get me through and give me something to feel like there was someone out there that knew what I was going through. So then I go to university and things really start to take a intense sort of turn. I'm dealing with a lot of things that I have never dealt with before. I'm coming to terms with things and it's really affecting me. So I go see a psychotherapist for the first time in my life, and we talk things out, and I feel like things are better for me at that time. But I begin to not be able to sleep and be up for hours and hours on end, and sometimes days on end. And I'm still feeling depressed, but I'm also feeling really titillated and excited. And so I spend all of my time learning more and more and more about this band and that band and this, hip hop artist, etc. And I'm trying to learn weird history instead of just doing the history that I was in the school to do, weird history, and have these intense political talks and just all this intense energy that I now recognize as mania. The non-sleeping, the chatterbox, just the whole deal, I now recognize as mania. And then I would crash, and I would feel horrible and not wanting to do anything, and not wanting to go anywhere, and not wanting to shower, not wanting to just in any way take care of myself. And so I went to the school, the Queen's University Medical Center, where they had psychologists and stuff that you could speak with. And I spoke with he was actually a history professor, but for some reason he was also working at the medical center. And I spoke with him and I explained my situation, and I said, I believe I'm suffering from depression. And he scoffed at me and said, depression, really? And so I left from there. I had no help. I was just spinning in the wind, and things just progressively got worse. In a couple years after that, I couldn't sleep at night at all. So I was up all the night until about 9 in the morning, and then I could crash from about 9 till 12, and then it would start all over again. I was drinking extremely heavily. I was depressed. I just didn't see any purpose in anything. It didn't make sense to do anything. It didn't make sense to make any plans. It didn't make sense to try and help myself. And again, no one swooped in and said, we think you have some mental health issues. And I didn't grab that I needed mental health assistance. And because of my experience with the medical center on campus, I certainly didn't trust them anymore. I didn't want to go and experience that sort of shame again. So I went about my life, and things just progressively got worse. So Q 2007, I think I was feeling better because I had gotten sober and I was away from the school environment, and I was working a job that, even though I didn't love the job, it was good to have something to do and all these things. So I started feeling better. So I started making plans to stage kind of a fresh start. And so my sister was going to Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, and my parents said, if you want to go, we will pay for you to go. And so I applied, they took me, and I said, here I go. And I went to Dalhousie in Nova Scotia, and I thought this was going to be the chance for redemption and fixing everything and so on. But I never considered what it would be like to meet no one, to make no friends, to have nothing, and live in an apartment alone with nothing and no one. So that depression came right back, and it was exceedingly difficult. And then I started feeling this feeling of not wanting to hurt myself, but being able to hurt myself. So I could jump out of this window right now and it'd be perfectly okay. I could stop that bus if I stood in front of it. It would be perfectly okay. Look, I'm just going to cross in front of traffic without signaling. That will be just fine. And more of these sort of things. You should open the oven right now and stick your hands in because nothing will happen to you. And I started really realizing that that is not conventional thoughts, that is not how the average person thinks of their experience on Earth. And I started doing a lot of crying, probably because I'm alone all the time, but I started doing a lot of crying. And my mother talks to me on the phone and she says, I think you might need some help, and I think you might need some antidepressant. Maybe try some Wellbutrin. Go talk to a doctor, see what they can do. So I go to the Dalhousie Medical Center and I speak to Dr. Glenn Andrea, and I tell him the whole story, and he says, I'm pretty sure that you have bipolar disorder, and has anyone ever told you that? And I said, no. He said, I'm pretty sure that that is what we're dealing with here. So we're going to start you on this little regimen, and we're going to monitor, and we'll go from there. So I think, okay. And I start really worrying because while I don't know a whole lot, I know bipolar disorder is a serious medical issue. So then I start thinking, oh man, I'm crazy and they're going to put me away and they're going to this and that. And I think that a lot of people probably have that type of reaction when they receive their initial diagnosis. But I went home and I told my mom on the phone what had happened and what they had said. And she was like, oh boy, well, we've definitely got to deal with this. And so I started dealing with it, taking the pills and so on. And I met with Dr. Andrea every week, and I had to get a blood test every week so we could assess my lithium level. And for 14 weeks, I saw Dr. Andrea every week, and we assessed my lithium level, which had to be upped over and over and over and over to stop me from feeling the intense mania that I was feeling, the non-sleeping, the intense thoughts of delusions of grandeur, self-harm. That took a while, and I think it's because I'm a very big man, and I was smaller then, but I've always been a big man, and I have an incredible tolerance for substances. I'm now on the largest dose of lithium that my psychiatrist has ever seen. And when I spoke to another psychiatrist this year and told him how much lithium I take, he would not believe me. So that took a long time with Dr. Andrea. We had to keep upping it. And at the time, I was taking the Wellbutrin, and it helped at first, but then it stopped working. So again, working on taking a different antidepressant to figure this whole thing out. And while this is happening, it's no easier on me. I'm still going through all of this stuff and up and down, and I don't know what, and then still being alone the whole time. Now, my sister is there. She's in Halifax. We even have class together. She comes over and sees me. She sometimes gets me groceries. We talk on the phone. But just your sister is not enough. You need other people in your life. And that just wasn't happening, and I didn't feel like leaving the apartment, and so on and so forth. So that was really rough. It was a very rough time. I couldn't go to class. I was unable to gather myself properly to go to class. So that didn't yield any friends, and it meant that I had to take an ill on all of my courses except for one. And that was kind of devastating because I felt like I had failed again. And I thought that this was going to be the great restart of my life. And what it turned out to be was just a giant mess. And it was a big learning experience for not just me, because that was very intense for me to learn and figure things out, but for my sister to learn what I was going through while also trying to go to school, and then my parents who had some understanding, but like really, if you don't have it or you're not a psychiatrist yourself, you generally don't have a great operating knowledge of bipolar disorder and how it all functions. So we're all sort of as a and my then girlfriend, now wife, she's also trying to figure it out. So all these working parts, we're all trying to figure out how this all works together. And it was a very intense experience. Crying and upset and encouraging, and it was very tumultuous.
There's a lot to unpack there, but because as you're kind of sharing your story, there's lots of things that kind of popped in my head. But one of them, you talk about high school and university, and obviously struggling with your mental health, at various points in those journeys. One thing, I shouldn't say blame, but as I get older, I kind of look at the way stories are told in the media, especially as, we're growing up. I'm obviously a little bit older than you are, but, we were told, early on in our lives through television and movies that, high school is the best time of your life. College is the best time in your life. And it's not for everybody. And I feel like there's these expectations that, forget about, a mental illness, but just, even with somebody who's emotionally and healthy, it's, it can be difficult to navigate those things. Then you throw in mental illness and all the other factors. Like, it can be a really difficult time, especially like in your instance, you reach out for help and you don't meet the right person at the right time.
Yeah, definitely.
like that, like you think about Queens, you think about your experience at Queens, one of the best universities in the world, and they can't help you when you reach out for help, right? Hopefully things have improved, but it's astonishing when you think about it. And like just to touch on that, like you did reach out for help several occasions. When you finally found the right person at Dalhousie, what was it like to have somebody treat you like the way, I can't remember his name, but your psychiatrist at the time who first diagnosed you with bipolar? Like, what was that experience like, having somebody take you seriously and try to understand what you were dealing with?
Dr. Andrea, when he was amazing the first time I met him, like he was so helpful and he wanted to connect. And I was like, that's great. And like, I feel good. But then when you see one man put so much time into you, and knowing that they have so many other students that they see during the week, they see during the day, and that when you come through, they're still there wanting that connection, caring how you are actually doing, and wanting to make sure that things are actually okay with you, I was blown away, and I felt like an intense, almost love for the man. Like, you keep me safe. You keep me okay. You keep me, doing okay. So when it came time for me to leave Dalhousie and move back to Ontario, I couldn't have expressed my gratitude more intensely than I did with him. And I told him, you saved my life. You keep me okay. You kept me safe.
As you're going through life, you mentioned your wife, you're a father now. You think about your experience as a child, and there's been a lot of attention in the last number of years put on, bullying and Pink Shirt Day and different things like that, to find a way to help kids who might be struggling. How does that, I'm kind of fumbling the question, but as somebody who experienced that, like, are you optimistic that things have changed for young people who are in school like you were, years ago? Or do you think there's still some issues there that we need to sort out?
I think in many ways it is better because there is a lot more understanding of what bullying and that type of behavior does to children. And so at the younger grade level, they are not so quick to say, well, deal with it yourself, or it's okay, they're probably just playing, or something like that. They deal with it. You don't see, well, I'm sure you still see, but you don't see and hear about the same level of tyranny on the playground in grades 2, 3, 4, 5 as you may have heard of in previous generations. So I think that's a lot to look up to. They're dealing with it at the root, and that's sort of passing its way up. Now, what I think is shameful and scary is the intense level of violence that is being seen in schools now. The intense level of almost gang-like activity. Not necessarily saying there aren't gangs in schools, but like this sort of like, don't mess with me, don't talk to me, don't touch me, don't look at me, or else. And then echoing that with massive outbreaks of violence and so on. And then obviously cyberbullying is just unreal. People are being told about it and people are learning about it, and there are things going on to stop it, but it's still pretty bad. And interestingly, I did a teaching placement in 2012, and I was teaching a class of grade 7s, and I showed them a video, and my YouTube name was logged in on the corner of the video. And this student in grade 7 that did not care for me wrote down my name, then went on YouTube at his house, searched my name, found a video. It was admittedly a very silly video, but a video I had made for a university course, and flamed it the entire time, calling me this name and that name and the next thing and all sorts of things. And I had to report it, and he got in trouble. But if at the time I was 29 years old, but if a 30-something-year-old man can get cyber bullied by a grade 7, then what can a grade 7 get from a grade 7?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple people on our podcast before who have been victims of social media bullying or cyberbullying, and as a father, it's horrifying because I think about even the things that went on, in our childhoods that stayed in the playground, right? Like you didn't bring it home. Your parents often didn't know what was going on because you didn't tell them, and there wasn't safe places to tell people, and like you said, a lot of it was sloughed off boys being boys. This is part of Canadian childhood, is dealing with these kind of things, and it's nice to see a shift, because I think, and hopefully the shift continues, but the problem is still there. Like, it's just they're dealing with it in a different way. It's happening you're using different tools, but the problems are still there, and I think people's eyes and ears are open for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, it's interesting. Going back to you, kind of where you left off, you talk about, maybe, we can circle back a bit, your experience with mental health, and how I came to know you was, a few years ago when the hospital was putting together its 100th anniversary campaign, and we were looking for people in the community, patients, leaders, whomever, who wanted to represent the hospital and help us celebrate 100th anniversary by educating people about mental health and the work we do. And you were one of the ones who applied, and you were one of our ambassadors of hope. So you did a lot of work for us in that period of time. And as you're telling your story, like from elementary school, high school to, university, and even, as an adult, pretty difficult mental health story, right? A lot of different things going on. And then all of a sudden you're an advocate. So how do you get from, I'm alone and I don't want to leave my apartment, or I'm shamed by people in the education system, feeling alone, to being out there and everybody knows that Jordan's bipolar and on lithium and you don't care anymore?
I have always felt like I've kind of been an open book my entire life. And so I felt like this was nothing to be ashamed of, and that I could, even from an early time in my journey, that I could be an advocate. I wouldn't have used that word at the time, but like, I could be someone to show people, this is what it looks like to have bipolar disorder. This is what it looks like to have a mental health concern, and show them that, we're not loony. We're not out there to hurt you. We're not out there to do unconscionable things. We're just people that have a little extra something to deal with that the rest of people that don't have that don't have to deal with. So I've always been pretty open about it. I really feel like my continued sobriety helped me a great deal It made it possible for me to have clear thinking. It made it possible to not have symptoms that were exacerbated by drinking, etc. So then I really just went down the road. I had a psychiatrist. I met with him regularly. I started regular therapy. I did that. I still do that every 2 weeks. I really had great assistance from my parents, from my sister, from my now wife. It was a lot of help. It was a lot of support, and I was able to put together a life and become something that would enable me to be a widespread advocate for other people and for the hospital.
And you did that, and your pictures in places, and you were introduced at places on social media, as Jordon, mental health advocate. What was the response that you got from friends and family about what you were doing with the hospital at that time?
Everyone I know was very proud of me and very happy for me. My parents were very proud of me and thought I did an excellent job. My wife was very proud of me. I was approached by former professors and so on, saying like, wow, you've done an amazing job. That's incredible. You're speaking for so many people that can't speak for their own condition. When we did the exhibit at the art gallery, so many people told me that what I did spoke to them. My speech spoke to them. They felt like I was truly representing people. It was touching.
So as you look back at, like your whole journey, there were times where, people could have helped you, right? If they had known more. What do you wish, like, if you were watching somebody else kind of go through the beginning of your journey, like with the susceptibility to mental health issues and different, kind of taking similar path that you took, like what would you wish for them, or what would you tell people who are around them how they could help?
For me, my support is sort of a three-pronged attack. Talk therapy with a professional therapist, psychiatry, because they prescribe medication and they monitor you and they make sure you're doing okay in terms of your chemical health, and then close friends or family giving you support. And I understand that not everyone has these opportunities, but that's what really worked for me. So I would wish that on all people. Now, that being said, talk therapy is not always an expenditure people are able to make. So in any way that you can reach any type of talk therapy for a subsidized rate or a free sort of situation, I would 100% recommend it. It sounds like it'd be scary or off-putting to talk to someone about something that you have, cloistered inside yourself for such a long time, but it's really freeing to get it out, to have someone who cares, in the sense that they care that you are hurting and they'd like to hear more, but doesn't care. Like, they don't judge. They're not concerned about what you tell them. They're not there to pass judgment. It's really great. Psychiatry, it's so hard to get a psychiatrist right now. sometimes on the wait list for a year. That certainly doesn't help, but I think it's worth getting your name out there, getting and trying to get someone to take care of you. And then the family aspect. Again, not everyone is perfect with their family or whatever, but most people have a family that they choose, whether it be friends, whether it be coworkers, whatnot, or they have their actual family. Let people support you. Let people in. Let people hear you. People love you. People want to be there for you, and you just have to accept that, and that will make things, it'll take that weight off your back.
It's a perfect message as we get into October. It's Mental Illness Awareness Month. I think October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and it's because of people like you that share your story and don't have any limitations. You're pretty honest, and I think people need to hear that. And thank you for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.